Welcome to part 1 of this 6-part Blender tutorial series where I'm going to show you how to create this cute robot animation. So this entire tutorial series is going to be completely free on my YouTube channel, and we're going to be rendering this with the Eevee rendering engine. So throughout the tutorial series, I'll show you the complete process, including modeling the robot, doing the materials, setting up the lighting, and then we'll be doing the animation, the compositing, and the rendering. And we'll also video edit it together with some sound effects. Now in this tutorial series, I'm going to be going a little bit faster and I'm not going to be saying quite as many of the shortcut keys. I will of course have my screencast keys right down here in the corner of the window in Blender so you can see what buttons I'm pressing, but I will be going a little bit faster. And if you are a complete beginner to Blender or very new to Blender, you might be interested in checking out my Blender for Complete Beginners tutorial series where I show you all the basics of Blender while creating this snowman character. But as long as you know some things like the basic shortcut keys, some basic workflows, and basic modeling, then you can definitely follow along with this tutorial. So in this part, in part 1, we're going to be modeling the robot's head. Then in part 2, we're going to be modeling the robot's body. Then in part 3, we're going to be modeling the robot's arms, and so by the third part, we'll have finished the modeling. Then in part 4, we're going to be doing all the lighting and materials, and the materials are going to be created procedurally with Blender's shader nodes. Then in part 5, we're going to be rigging the robot, and so to rig the robot, we're not going to be using bones, we're going to be using a basic mechanical rigging setup where we basically parent objects to other objects, and then we set the origin point to the rotation point so that we can do things like rotate the arms and rotate the body and things like that. And then for the face of the robot, we are going to be rigging that, and we're going to be rigging it with shape keys. So we're basically going to be adding some different shape keys and making some different poses, so like the eyes looking from the left to right, having a smile, having a sad face, some different things like that, and then we'll use the shape keys to animate the robot's mouth and the eyes in the animation. And then in part 6, the last part, we're going to be doing the animation. We'll be rendering that together, and then we'll be using Blender's video editor to edit together the final animation with some sound effects. And if you enjoy these type of tutorials and you'd like to help support me and this channel, then some great ways to do that are by checking out my Gumroad store and my Patreon page. So on my Gumroad store and Patreon page, you can purchase the tutorial project files and you'll get the final renders, the finished Blender file, the animated robot, and the different textures, sound effects, and resources that you'll need to follow along with the tutorial. So if you're interested in purchasing the project files, links are in the video description. So thank you everyone so much for your support. Now, if creating robots in Blender is something that you're really interested in, something that you want to get better at, then I can highly recommend checking out CG Boost's course, Robotic Planet. CG Boost is currently having a huge site-wide sale on their website, where you can get 30% off any of their courses or 15% off any of their bundles. And so the sale is going on from October 9th through October 31st of 2025. So now is a great time to purchase if you're interested in any of their courses. So CG Boost's robot course is split up into 3 parts. So in part 1, they create a basic robot. Then in the second part, they create a fish robot. And then in the third part, they create an ostrich robot. So at the beginning of the course, they talk about idea generation and how to create some cool sci-fi designs for your robots. Then the course covers some cool different modeling techniques for modeling robots. And then the course also covers some different cool procedural material methods to create some cool robot materials, like some different metal materials on the robot, and adding little things like wear and scratches. And the course also covers some cool rigging techniques for rigging robots. And the course also covers some basic animation principles and how to animate a robot. So if you're interested in purchasing the course, then you can use my affiliate link in the description, and if you do purchase through my affiliate link, then I'll earn a small commission. But I only recommend content to my audience which I really stand behind. So before we get started with the modeling, I want to go over all the different resources that you'll need to download to follow along with the tutorial. So the first resource that we'll be using are these modeling reference images, and this is just going to help us with the modeling. So there's going to be a front reference and a side reference, so you can download those reference images for free on my Gumroad and Patreon with the links in the video description, and we'll be adding them into Blender to help us with the modeling. Then I'm also going to be downloading this HDRI from polyhaven.com, the Blue Photo Studio, and I'll be downloading the 1K HDR version from Polyhaven Polyhaven. Then the next resource that I'll be using is my procedural bumpy rubber material. So earlier this year, I made a tutorial showing how to create some different rubber materials. So if you want to pause that video, you can check the link in the description and learn how to create the procedural bumpy rubber material, and then we'll be adding it into the blend file and adding it onto the robot's wheel. Or you can also purchase the procedural bumpy rubber material on my Gumroad store. Or if you're one of my customers of my Ultimate Blender procedural material pack, then you'll already have the bumpy rubber, and so you can just drag and drop it into the scene when we're doing the materials. And then at the very last part, when we do the video editing, I'm going to be using 3 different sound effects. So I'm going to be using this robot voice sound effect, this robot wheels sound effect, and then also this sci-fi background ambient sound effect. And those are all free sound effects from freesound.org. So again, link is in the description. Now I thought it might be useful to share with you all how I created the design for the cute robot if you want to go ahead and make your own robots in the future. So I first went online and just looked for reference images for cute robots and just downloaded a bunch of cute little robot reference images, and then I use a program called PureRef, and I just threw all the reference images into PureRef to create a nice reference board. And I do actually have a tutorial on how to use PureRef. If you want to check it out, link is in the description. So once I created the reference board, I just pulled out my sketchbook and I just did some rough sketching and created some different concept designs for the robot. So these are the different drawings that I came up with. So I just grabbed like some different elements, like some cool wheels that I thought looked cool, some different shapes for the body, and so I just drew out these different sketches, but then I really liked these ones over here, so I decided to actually open up Blender and then create a very rough design of that robot. So I just very quickly threw together a quick robot. I just added some basic materials and things, and so this is the robot that I came out with. And then after that, I went back into Blender in a completely new project and then created the final robot version. All right, so here we are in Blender, and what I'm going to do is just select everything, and we're just going to delete everything. And I'm now going to go to front view, and we're now going to add in the front reference. So from my file browser, I'm just going to drag and drop in the front reference image. And again, you can download these for free with the link in the description on my Gumroad and Patreon. So once I drag in the reference, I want to make sure the reference is in the very center. So I'll hit Alt-G, and Alt-G will make sure it's in the very center. Now let's go to side view by hitting 3 on the numpad, and we're going to drag and drop in the side reference, and then again hit Alt-G so it's in the very center. And with how I create the reference images, they should be exactly aligned. So if you just drag them in and then put them in the very center, the front and side should be aligned. Now I'm going to open up the outliner, and just to keep things really organized, I'm going to rename these. So I'm going to call these side ref and then front ref for the references. Then I'm going to select both references. I'm going to move them by hitting M. I'm going to click on new collection, and I'm going to call these references or blueprints, whatever you want to do. Click on create, and then I'll close the reference collection. Now what I'm going to do is click on the funnel, and I'm going to click on the selectable one, and then I'm just going to click on this to disable it. So now I can't actually select the reference images, so that way we aren't accidentally going to move them. Let's save our project. So I'll click on file and save. And I'm just going to save this as cute robot in my project files, and I'll just save Blender file. All right, so now let's add in the first object. So I'll go to the add menu, and we can add a cube. I'll go into edit mode, and I'm going to scale the cube down. Let's also go into wireframe, and I'll scale it down and then go back to object mode and move it up into where the center of the head is. We can also hit F2 to rename the object, and I can just call it head. Then in edit mode, I'm going to add a loop cut. So Control R and left click and right click. We're going to deselect everything, and then we're just going to box select this half side, and we're going to delete the vertices. So now let's go here to the modifiers. We're going to add the mirror modifier to mirror it over to the other side. And let's also turn on the clipping so that it merges with the mirror. So now we're going to box select the top and bring it down on the Z-axis, box select the bottom and bring it up on the Z-axis. Then we'll box select just this corner and bring it out. And then we're going to box select this corner and bring it in. So it just aligns with the head. And then you can see there are some bevels here, but we'll be adding those later. Let's go to side view, and you can see with how I set up the reference images, they should automatically be the correct size. So I'm going to box select the back, and I'm going to move it back, and then I'm going to extrude the back out, and then I'm going to scale the back down just like that. And then as for the front here, we're going to select the front, and we're going to bring the front back, and then I'm going to shear it. So I just like to hit F3 and then start to type in shear. So F3 will use the search. type in shear, click on the shear, and then I can just drag my mouse back and forth, and that's going to shear it. So basically it's going to change the angle. So I'm just going to bring it there, click there, and then I can just bring it back and forth on the y-axis because you can see the robot's head is kind of tilted back a little bit. All right, let's go back to solid view. That's looking pretty good, but I do want to add a bevel. So I'm going to select these 3 loops. Let's go to front view. We'll go to wireframe, and I'll just hit Control B to add a bevel. Just add a bevel there. We'll deselect everything, box select this bottom here, so the bottom corner, and add another bevel, and just bring the bevel up like that. Let's now go to side view, and I'm going to add a loop cut. So we'll add a loop cut right here and drag the loop over just like that. So it fits that little spot there, kind of where that crevice is. Then I'll add a bevel. So Control B to add a bevel, just click there. Then I'm going to extrude it. Then I'm going to hit escape and then use Alt S to scale along the normals. So just bring that down just a little bit. All right, so back in solid view, you can see that now goes in a bit. So we just have that nice little crease there, and it's a little bit hard to see now, but once we add like a bevel modifier, it'll be easier to see. So now let's add some more modifiers to this. So I'm going to click on add modifier, and I'm going to add the bevel modifier. And so here on the bevel, I'll just turn the amount really to a small value of like a 0.002, and then I'll turn the segments up to like a 3. So if I zoom in there, you can just see there's a little tiny bevel there on the edges, and then I'll just shade the object smooth. And then finally, if I kind of look here on the shading, I want to kind of make these flat faces really sharp and look sharper on the edges. So I'm going to search for the weighted normal modifier. So those flat spots, so all these flat plates here look a lot nicer in the shading. So I'll just minimize all of these modifiers. I'm also going to rename this collection to robot. So we have the robot collection, and then we have the references collection. And don't forget to save the project. So I'm going to go to the add menu, and I'm going to add a new cube, and let's rename this cube, and I'm going to call this cube screen. So this is going to be like the screen on the front of the robot, because the robot's face is basically like a sort of like a little computer monitor with like a face. So we'll go into edit mode and we'll scale it down. We'll go to front view. We'll go to wireframe. Let's go back to object mode. And in object mode, we're going to move it up on the Z axis. And then back in edit mode, we're going to scale it down a bit like that. Bring it up a little bit on the Z axis. And then we're going to scale it up like that. Now we're going to box select the top, and we'll just scale the top in on the X axis. Just like that, so it kind of fits the screen. Let's go to side view. We're going to select everything and bring it forward like that. Then we're just going to box select the front and bring it back on the y-axis. Then we're going to hit F3 again. We can click on shear because that's on the top because we just searched for it earlier. So we'll click on shear, and then I can move my mouse and just shear it and place it right there. Let's also select the back here. Hit F3 and we'll click on shear and shear it as well. Just kind of eyeball it, try to get it pretty close, and then we can drag it back there. And maybe I'll shear it one more time just so it kind of aligns up with the face. So I'm now going to box select the top here and then box select the bottom, and I'm just going to scale these in. Just scale them in like that. Let's go to front view, and then I want to bring them out. So let's actually scale it. We'll just scale it up like that. And then we'll go back here, box like this and bring it up a little bit, box like this and bring it down a little bit like that, just so it fits the front there. So there we go, we kind of have the front screen of the robot. We'll add modifier, we're going to add a bevel modifier. Let's turn the segments up to like a 4, and then I'm going to drag the amount down. Let's just drag the amount pretty small, but we're not going to make it too small. I don't want it to be as small as the head, I'm just going to make it maybe like that big so it's a little bit more round. Then in edit mode, I also want to go to the back here, and we're going to go to the face select and select this face, and I'm just going to delete that face because we don't actually need that face in there. And then in object mode, we're just going to shade it smooth. So now we have that nice bevel there, so it's a little bit larger. And then finally, we're also going to search for the weighted normal modifier. So let's now add the eyes. So I'm going to go to the add menu, and we are going to add a circle. And behind me on the add circle settings, I'm going to leave the vertices at 32 so it's a bit more detailed. So let's go into edit mode, and I'm going to rotate the eyes. We'll rotate it on the X by 90, and then we will go to side view, and in object mode, I'm going to drag it here to the front, kind of where the eyes are. And then in edit mode, we're going to scale it down. Let's go to front view. We'll go to wireframe, and I'm going to bring it over to this side and scale it down. And then we will add the mirror modifier so that there's eyes on the other side. Let's just bring it over here, and we're going to scale it on the x-axis like that. Then let's turn on the proportional editing, and I'm going to shape it because it's a little bit more shaped like an egg shape. So we're going to go to the vertex select. We're just going to box select the bottom here, and we'll bring it down the z-axis, and let's scroll our mouse wheel to change the size of the proportional editing. And then we can also scale it on the z-axis just to flatten it a little bit. So I kind of modeled it so the eyes on the bottom are a little bit more flat, and then they're a little bit of an oval shape on the top. just because I think that looks a little bit nicer. So now let's turn off proportional editing, and we're going to extrude everything, and then we're going to scale everything and scale it down. Now I want to turn it back into a circle, so what I'm going to do is add the loop tools extension. So I'll click on edit, I'll go to the preferences, and I'm going to go to get extensions, and I'm going to search for loop tools, and you can just install the loop tools add-on, or it's actually an extension, not an add-on. So now if you open up the side panel here, let's go to edit, we can open up loop tools, and we can click on a circle. And so our selection is now a perfect circle, so we can close that side panel. So let's just scale it down and stick it right there in the very center. Now also let's navigate over here, we'll zoom into it, and we'll go back to solid view, and I'm going to extrude the entire thing back, just like that, so it has thickness. And then if we just select that entire loop there, let's also extrude it back so it has thickness. Now if we select everything, we need to hit Shift N to recalculate the normals because the faces were flipped. And then also we need to taper it because it's a bit angled. So we're going to rotate everything on the X-axis just a little bit, so that it's rotated over with the screen, and kind of bring it back a little bit. Now what I want to do is add a bevel to these edges. So I'm going to just select that loop there, and we'll press Ctrl B for a bevel, and we're going to scroll our mouse wheel to add a few cuts to the bevel, just like that, click there, and we'll do the same thing down here. So select that loop and add a bevel, just like that. We'll go back to object mode, and we're going to shade everything smooth. Then we'll press Ctrl 1, so it's the Ctrl 1 on the top of my keyboard to add the subdivision surface modifier, so the entire eye is going to be a little bit more smoothed out, and I'll turn the viewport and render levels to 1. So now let's add the mouth, so I'll go to the add menu, we're going to add a plane, and we'll bring the plane forward and bring the plane up, and then in edit mode we're going to scale it way down, and then we're going to rotate the plane by 90 on the x-axis. Let's go to front view, and in wireframe we're going to bring the plane down, and in edit mode we're going to scale it down. Let's move it to the side. Then we're going to add modifier, and we're going to add a mirror modifier. We're going to turn on clipping, and then we can drag it back here into the mirror and scale it down so it merges with the mirror. All right, so we'll scale everything up a little bit, and then we're going to box select the side here, and we're going to rotate it, and then we're going to extrude it, rotate it, and extrude it. And we're just going to do that a few times, just like that, kind of scale that down a little bit. All right, so there is the basic mouth. So let's select everything, we're going to zoom into it, and we're going to extrude everything back. And then once we bring it back, we're going to delete the faces. So now in object mode, we're going to drag everything back a little bit. And then in edit mode, we're going to select everything, and let's recalculate the normals because the normals need to be flipped. And then we're going to rotate everything on the x-axis so that it aligns with the screen. And then back in object mode, let's just drag it back a little bit like that. Then we're going to hit Ctrl 2. Ctrl 2 is the shortcut to add a subsurf with 2 levels, and then I'm going to shade the object smooth. Then in edit mode, I want to add a loop cut here to give it a little bit of sharpness, so I'll just add a loop cut and drag the loop cut forward a little bit, and then maybe drag everything back a little bit. And so now the robot's character is really starting to come out. So now I'm going to be modeling like some cylinders on the side for the ears, so we'll go to the add menu, and I'm going to add a cylinder. And I'll go to front view, and I'll bring it up. Let's go into wireframe, bring it up here into the center. In edit mode, we're going to scale it way down and bring it over, and then rotate it by 90 degrees. We'll scale it up and then bring it in a little bit and kind of bring it back. And then we need to go to object mode, and I'll bring it down so it's kind of in the center there. And then back in edit mode, I can scale it down just like that. So it kind of fits that spot there, kind of where like a robot's ear is. So it's just like a cylinder, but I think it kind of looks like an ear. So now let's kind of extrude it out, and then we'll scale it down like that. Let's go to side view and just make sure that aligns, and you can see it doesn't actually align. So what I want to do is go back to object mode and just drag it back on the y-axis so it's farther back. All right, just like that. So let's now zoom into the ear and go back into edit mode, and I'm going to go to the face select, and we'll select this face. Let's actually go back to side view so we can see the reference. And in wireframe view, I'm going to inset it just like that, and then inset it again, and then place it there, and then inset it a third time, just like that. So back in solid view, I'm going to just select that loop, and we're going to extrude it back like that. Then we're going to select that face, and I'm going to extrude it out. So now I also want to add a few more details. So I'm going to place the 3D cursor right there. Then I'll go to the add menu, and I can just add another cylinder. And on the add cylinder settings, I'm going to turn this to 16 on the vertices so that it's a little bit less topology. And then if I zoom out here, we want to scale it down. Let's just scale it way down like that. And then we can rotate it on the Y by 90. We'll go to front view, actually side view, and in wireframe view, we're going to move it down like that. And then we're going to duplicate it. We're going to duplicate one bolt like down there. Then let's use the L key to select the linked vertices so we have both of them selected, and we'll hit Shift D, then we'll hit R, then we'll type in 45 and hit enter. So now that we did that all in one action, we can hit Shift R, and that's going to repeat the last action. So it's going to duplicate it and move it around by 45 degrees. So you can see we now have them all the way around. Let's go back to object mode, and we're going to add a mirror modifier. And then I also want to add the bevel and weight to normal. So I'm going to make sure this object is selected and then shift select the other object. And what we can do is click on the modifiers here. So click on the arrow next to the bevel, and we're going to click on copy to selected. Then here on the weighted normal, we'll click on the drop down arrow and click on copy to selected. And then just select this cylinder and we can just shade it smooth. So now you can see that it has the same bevel and weighted normal modifiers because we copied the modifier from this object to the other object. Now let's model the antenna. So I'm going to hit Shift C to center the 3D cursor. I'll go to the add menu and I'm going to add a cylinder. And on the add cylinder settings, I'll leave the vertices at 16. Let's go to front view and we're going to go into edit mode. Let's scale it way down, and then back in object mode, we're going to move it right up here. Just bring it up, and then in edit mode, we'll scale it down again, and then we'll scale it up on the Z axis just like that. So it's just about big enough, maybe move it up a little bit. Let's go to the vertex select. We'll go into wireframe, and I'm going to box select the top here, and we'll extrude it and then scale it and just make it a bit bigger like that. Then we'll extrude it way up to the very top, and then we'll extrude it, scale it down a little bit, extrude it, scale it down a little bit more, and extrude it and scale it down a little bit more. So we have that nice little rounded top. All right, that's pretty good. Then we'll go here to the bottom. We're going to box select just the bottom here, and we'll extrude it. We'll start to rotate it, extrude it, rotate it, extrude it and rotate it, and then extrude again and rotate it just like that. And then we can scale everything. We'll scale it on the x-axis and we'll type 0 and enter so that it's flat, and then extrude it one more time. So if we go back to solid view, we'll go to object mode. We can go to side view, and in wireframe, we'll just move it over just like that, so the antenna is right there on the reference. So it's right there coming out of the ear. So I now want to add the same modifiers. So I'm going to select the antenna and then shift select the head. And let's go here to the modifiers, and we'll click on the drop down arrow on the bevel and copy to selected, click on the weight to normal and copy to selected. And then we don't really need to shade it smooth, but I am just going to do that. I'll just click on shade it smooth. But the weight to normal basically already makes it shaded smooth. Let's now model the neck. So I'll go to the add menu and we're going to add another cylinder. On the add cylinder settings, I'm going to turn this back to the default of 32 vertices so it's a little bit more smooth. Let's go to front view. We'll go to wireframe and we'll bring it up so the origin point is about in the center. And then in edit mode, we're going to scale it way down and then scale it down on the Z axis, just like that. Now, what I'm going to do is go back to solid view, and I'm going to hit / on the numpad to isolate it to its own local view so I can just see the object. So I'm going to go to the face select, and I'll select this face, and we're going to delete the faces. Then I'm going to go to the bottom one, select this face, and we're going to delete the faces. So let's now go to front view, and we can also hit the / to go out of the local view of the object, and we'll go into wireframe, and I'm going to add a loop cut right up there. We'll add another loop cut right down there, and then we can go to the face select. Let's go back to solid view, and I'm just going to select that loop of faces that we just created, and I'm going to extrude it, hit escape, and then Alt S to scale it along the normals, bring it in like that. We can go to front view again, go to wireframe and hit Alt S to scale along the normals, just like that. All right, so now we have the neck piece. And if we go to side view and go back to wireframe, zoom in here, that's looking good, so it's connecting to the reference. Let's add the same modifiers. So I'm going to select the neck and then shift select the head, click on the drop down and copy to selected on the bevel, click on the drop down and copy to selected on the weight to normal, and then shade the object smooth. And then before we finish with this part, I am going to rename the objects. So we already renamed the screen, we already renamed the head, but let's rename the antenna. Then also the cylinders here, I'm just going to call these like ears. And I'm just hiding each object after I renamed it, so I remember that I renamed it. We'll select the neck, double click here, we can just call it neck in the outliner, hide that. We can rename this to mouth, and then this one here, we can rename this to eyes. So let's hit Alt H just to unhide all the objects. So I will hit Control S to save the project, and there is the robot's head. So that is going to finish it up for part 1 of this tutorial series. So I hope you're enjoying the tutorial, and thank you for watching. And if you'd like to help support the channel and purchase the tutorial project files, you can get those with the links in the description on my Gumroad and Patreon. And as I mentioned earlier, if robots is something that you really enjoy creating in Blender and something that you want to get more into, then I can highly recommend checking out CG Boost's course Robotic Planet. It's a really great in-depth course for creating cool robots in Blender. So you can use my affiliate link in the description to purchase the course if you're interested, and that's a great way to help support the channel, so thank you for your support. So in the next part, in part 2, we're going to be modeling the body. So when the next part is released, it's going to be right up there on the end screen, and I'll also have it linked in the video description. So thanks for watching, and I'll see you in part 2.